Jason Trent had always lived on the edge. Space was his playground, and danger was just another thrill. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to unfold. He floated in the cockpit of the Starfire Vanguard, staring at the blinding expanse of the Orion Rift. The experimental plasma cannon rested on his ship's hull like a sleeping beast. Jason had spent months building it in secret, claiming it could pierce even the densest nebulae. He wasn't supposed to fire it today. Not yet. But curiosity, that ever-dangerous companion, whispered in his ear, "What happens if you push the boundaries?" He hesitated for a moment, watching the stars flicker against the rift shadow. Then, with a trembling finger, he pressed the ignition sequence. The cannon roared. Energy ripped through the void like a lightning strike across a black canvas. A shockwave reverberated across the nearby asteroids, sending fragments spinning violently. Jason's heart raced. "Okay, maybe just a warning shot," he muttered. At first, nothing happened. The stars returned to their normal shimmer, and the rift seemed calm again. He exhaled. "False alarm," he whispered, relief washing over him. Then the comms crackled. A sound unlike any signal he'd ever heard. A low, vibrating resonance that made his chest ache. The display on his console lit up with a strange symbol, one that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "Who dares?" Jason froze. The voice, or whatever it was everywhere at once. It wasn't coming through normal channels. It felt like it was inside his mind. He fumbled with the controls, trying to identify the source, but the sensors were going haywire. Every reading contradicted itself. Something was moving, something massive, intelligent, and deadly, and it was approaching. At first, he saw just a glimmer. Streaks of red light darting between the stars. Then the shapes became unmistakable. Ships, but not like any human or alien craft he'd encountered. These were jagged, dark, almost organic-looking, as if the metal itself were alive. Their hulls shimmered with faint crimson veins, pulsing like they were breathing. Jason's stomach dropped. He had read the legends, stories whispered across galaxies about the hunters, the ultimate predators. Worlds disappeared without a trace. Civilizations erased in hours. Entire fleets were crushed before they could call for help. But he never imagined he'd see them. And now, they were coming for him. Panic clawed at him. He spun the ship in a desperate maneuver, ducking through asteroid fields, hoping to throw them off. The sensors screamed warnings. Too late. The hunters matched every move, their speed and coordination terrifyingly perfect. No ordinary pursuit ship could keep up, let alone escape. Jason gritted his teeth. "Okay, think. He scanned the comms again. Maybe someone had a solution. Maybe someone had survived. The response was immediate, chilling, a flood of psychic images flashing his mind. Screaming faces, burning cities, entire planets shredded like paper. And then the message. "You will pay." Jason slammed the console. Sweat streamed down his face. His hands shook, his fingers numb. He had just made a mistake, a colossal, unforgivable mistake. He had fired a cannon that disturbed the hunter's slumber. He had declared war on the deadliest beings in the galaxy. And now there was no going back. The first hunter ship broke through the asteroid field, gliding effortlessly like a shadow come to life. Its crimson eyes, or whatever passed for eyes, locked onto him. Jason could feel the intent, a pure, predatory malice. It wasn't just hunting. It was savoring the thrill of the chase. Jason slammed the thrusters, pulling the Vanguard into a sudden dive. Sparks flew as the ship's hull scraped an asteroid. Alarm klaxons blared. Systems overloaded. He was running out of options. Every path he tried to escape, the hunters anticipated, moving faster, striking harder. A thought pierced his panic. Maybe if I run to the rift itself. He didn't know if it would work. The rift was unstable, dangerous beyond reckoning. But better to risk oblivion than be torn apart slowly. He punched the thrusters, heart hammering, eyes glued to the swirling cosmic void ahead. Then, just as the first hunter ship lunged, everything went black for a heartbeat. A deafening vibration shook the Vanguard. Jason held on, praying the ship would hold together. And in that split second, a single realization burned into him. The galaxy would never forget his mistake. He had fired the cannon. He had awakened the ultimate killers. And now, there was no turning back. Jason's fingers burned on the controls, his knuckles white as the Starfire Vanguard tore through the black void of space. The hunter ships weren't just following. They were anticipating. Every evasive maneuver he tried, every twist, every dive, was met with a cold, precise counter. His calm crackled again, a soundless whisper of pure malice that filled the cabin like smoke. You cannot run. Jason swallowed hard. He had no allies, no fleet to back him up. Even if he could warn anyone, by the time the message reached them, the hunters would already have shredded their defenses. He was alone. Alarm screamed as a warning blip lit the sensor panel. The hunter's lead ship had locked onto him. Its crimson pulse illuminated the cockpit with an eerie, living glow. It was closer now, moving faster than physics or hope should allow. Jason pressed the thrusters harder. The Vanguard groaned, metal screeching under the strain. Asteroids tumbled past him, and he barely threaded the ship through a collapsing field. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and it would be over. The hunters didn't just want to kill him. Jason realized that now. They wanted to terrorize, to make him understand how utterly insignificant he was. Every sudden shadow across his sensors, every psychic whisper, was calculated to break him before they struck. A flicker on the main display caught his eye. A small, uncharted moon orbiting a gas giant. Could he lose them there? He banked sharply, racing toward it, praying the hunters wouldn't anticipate the move. They did. The lead hunter's ship darted around the moon faster than Jason thought possible. Its hull shimmered, reshaping almost organically, moving like a predator stalking prey. And then it struck, not physically, but psychically. Images, visions, sensations. They flooded Jason's mind. Entire cities burning, fleets disintegrating in seconds, screams echoing through the void. The hunters were showing him what awaited any who dared challenge them. Jason screamed, not from fear of death, but from the terror of knowing how vast the consequences would be. And yet, he had no choice but to keep running. He made a desperate calculation. There was a wormhole nearby, unstable and largely uncharted. It could fling him light years across the galaxy, or tear the Vanguard apart. A gamble, yes, but what other option did he have? He engaged the jump drive. The ship quivered violently, and Jason's stomach lurched as the Vanguard shook under the strain. Energy flares licked the edges of the cockpit. For a moment, everything went white, and he thought he had failed. Then, with a violent jolt, he emerged into another sector. Stars unfamiliar and alien filled the viewport. For a brief moment, he thought he was safe. He wasn't. The hunters had followed. Not through the wormhole, something he hadn't anticipated, but somehow impossibly, they were still on his trail. Their ships blinked into existence, shadows against the stars, as if they could bend reality itself. Jason's heart pounded. There was nowhere to run. Everywhere he turned, they were there, always faster, always smarter. He realized a terrifying truth. The hunters didn't just hunt ships. They hunted patterns, instincts, fear itself. And Jason's fear was screaming in the vacuum of space. In a flurry of desperation, he contacted the nearest human colony he could find, his voice trembling. Listen to me. The hunters are coming. You need to evacuate. Now! Static answered him. Then a distorted, almost alien voice, cold and mocking. Run? You? We know you are alone. The message wasn't from the colony. It was from them. The hunters had tapped into his comms before he even spoke. Every move, every attempt to contact help, every plan he could think of, they were already ahead. Jason gritted his teeth. Survival wasn't just about speed. It was about thinking differently. He had to outsmart predators that had never been defeated. But how do you outthink the beings who could see your very thoughts? He dove toward a dense asteroid belt, weaving through jagged rocks that could crush his ship at any miscalculation. The hunters followed, relentless. Each pulse of their crimson light seemed to mock him, reminding him that in this game he was prey. Then, just as a massive asteroid threatened to crush him, the lead hunter ship veered sharply, and emitted a psychic pulse, so strong that Jason was thrown from his seat. The cockpit lights flickered, alarms blaring. He was disoriented, barely able to react. And then he saw it. A shadow moving faster than thought, enveloping the asteroid belt like a wave. The lead hunter's ship struck the rocks, and instead of being destroyed, it reshaped itself, flowing around the obstacles as though they weren't even there. Jason's stomach dropped. Nothing could stop them. Nothing. He pushed the Vanguard into a desperate climb, escaping the asteroid belt. But the truth gnawed at him. He wasn't just running from ships. He was running from inevitability itself. The hunters were patient. They were intelligent. They were everywhere. And they were coming for him. For every life in the galaxy that dared to notice them. Jason stared at the stars ahead, trembling. He knew one thing with certainty. This war had already begun, and he had no idea how to win. Jason Trent's hands shook as he clutched the Starfire Vanguard controls. Every system warning screamed at him. Every panel blinked red with alarms. But this wasn't about the ship anymore. This was about the galaxy itself. And he was powerless to stop what was coming. A blip appeared on the long-range sensors. A human colony planet, barely inhabited, orbiting a dying sun. He didn't know why he checked it. Maybe it was hope. Maybe he wanted to believe someone, somewhere, could survive. Then the hunter fleet appeared. Not just one ship, but dozens, hundreds, if the sensors were correct. They spread across the planet like shadows stretching over the land. Jason froze. This was no hunt for a single ship. This was a demonstration, a warning. He tried to warn the colony through every comm channel available. This is Jason Trent. Evacuate immediately. The hunters. Static swallowed his voice. Then, a whisper across the comm, cold and mocking, sent chills down his spine. There is no evacuation. Jason watched in horror as the lead hunter's ship emitted a pulsing crimson beam from its hull. It struck the planet's atmosphere, and within seconds, clouds ignited into streaks of fire. The beam expanded, consuming cities, forests, everything in its path. The sensors showed billions of lives vanishing in minutes. The screams didn't come through the comms. They came into his mind, vivid and unrelenting. He stumbled back from the console, nausea and fear twisting his stomach. They're doing it on purpose, he whispered. They're showing me what happens if anyone opposes them. The colony's defenses, weak as they were, activated in desperation. Missile batteries fired. Lasers cut through the haze of burning atmosphere. But it was useless. The hunters moved faster than thought, dodging, reshaping, striking back with precision that defied any known physics. Within moments, the defenses were destroyed and the colony was gone. Every structure reduced to ash. Every life erased. Jason's throat went dry. He hadn't even survived a scratch, and already entire worlds were being obliterated. And yet, he had done this. Somehow, by firing the cannon, he had drawn the hunter's attention to humanity. He gritted his teeth. I have to survive. I have to warn others. I have to... But even as he tried to focus, another image flashed in his mind. Another world, one of the major human colonies, being erased in the same fashion. Then another, and another. The sheer scale of the destruction was staggering. The hunters weren't just hunting him. They were rewriting the balance of the galaxy, one world at a time. Jason slammed the console. There has to be a way to fight back, he muttered. There has to... A new sound cut through the panic. A rhythmic, almost musical vibration, emanating from the lead hunter's ship. Jason's stomach dropped. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a signal. The hunters weren't mindless. They were coordinating, communicating in a language beyond comprehension. But Jason understood its meaning perfectly. You are next. The Vanguard shuddered violently as the nearest hunter's ship fired a secondary beam directly at him. Jason twisted the ship, narrowly avoiding disintegration. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and the hull groaned under the strain. He was running out of options. Desperation clawed at him. He had been reckless, impulsive. But now every decision, every movement, could mean the difference between life and absolute annihilation. He realized that survival wasn't about fighting the hunters directly. It was about staying alive long enough to find an edge. He took a deep breath, forcing his hands steady. He had seen what they were capable of. He had seen the first strike. The galaxy was burning, and there was no stopping the hunters, not yet. But he could escape. He could survive. He could learn. The vanguard accelerated, ducking into the shadow of a nearby asteroid belt. Behind him, the crimson glow of destruction lit up the void. Entire planets reduced to nothing, screams of billions echoing in his mind. Jason clenched his fists. "They can destroy worlds, but they won't break me," he said, voice low and steady. "Not yet." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. He had no allies, no reinforcements, and no idea how to fight beings that could anticipate every move. He was alone. He was hunted, and the hunters were patient. They would not stop. Jason Trent had escaped. Barely. The crimson glow of annihilated colonies still burned in his mind. Every star he passed seemed to whisper their screams. But he knew he couldn't run forever. If the hunters were patient enough, and they were, eventually, no corner of the galaxy would hide him. He needed allies. Desperate, he broadcasted a signal to every known human and alien faction willing to fight, or at least survive. Rogue fleets, mercenary captains, even outlaws who usually preyed on the weak. "This is Jason Trent." His voice trembled but carried urgency. "The hunters are real. They're coming, and they don't just kill ships. They erase worlds. If you want to survive, join me. Fight with me, or die before you even see them coming." Responses trickled in. A ragtag convoy of ships, stolen military vessels, and merchant freighters answered his call. Hope surged in Jason's chest. Maybe, just maybe, they could form a resistance. But hope is a dangerous thing in times like this. Even as they coordinated a rendezvous near the Helix cluster, Jason sensed the tension among his newfound allies. Fear was a sharp blade, cutting trust before it could form. Leaders whispered among themselves, questioning his motives, questioning whether he was sane, or if he might be a lure for the hunters. He tried to maintain order. "We don't have time for politics. If we delay, they'll destroy the next planet on our route." Some listened, others didn't. One faction, led by a merciless warlord named Kellen Voss, seemed eager to abandon Jason's plan entirely. "Let them hunt you," Voss sneered. "If we hide and wait, maybe some of us survive." Jason's jaw tightened. He had no choice but to keep them moving. The hunters were relentless, adaptive. Every delay was a death sentence. As the convoy approached a resource-rich system to refuel, a sudden tremor shook the fleet. A hunter ship had appeared almost instantly, striking with precision that defied physics. Jason shouted orders, directing ships into evasive formations. But the attack tore through their lines, disabling engines and ripping apart hulls. Chaos erupted. Ships collided, alarms blaring. Jason realized in horror. The hunters had adapted again. They were learning. Every action, every tactic, was anticipated before it could even be executed. In the aftermath, the convoy gathered in a scattered formation. Fires burned on several ships. Supplies were lost. And worst of all, Voss's faction had vanished. No message, no trace. They had fled, leaving Jason and the others exposed. Jason's chest tightened. The hunters didn't need help to destroy humanity. Fear and betrayal did part of the work for them. And now, he realized the very people he tried to rally had made him vulnerable. "We can't trust anyone," he muttered. "Not yet. Not until we find a way to fight back." Even as he spoke, another hunter pulse struck nearby. This one was different. Longer, more calculated. Jason felt it in his bones before the sensors could detect it. It wasn't a weapon. It was a message. A warning. Alliances fail. Resistance ends. You are alone. Jason clenched the controls, anger and fear mingling in a dangerous cocktail. He had to adapt faster than hunters. Outthink them in ways no one had ever done. Every ship that betrayed him, every fleet that hesitated, strengthened the hunter's advantage. He made a decision. He would no longer rely on hope or loyalty. Only strategy, only cunning, only survival. He began marking potential escape routes, plotting ambushes, and testing every defensive system aboard the Vanguard. He knew the hunters were watching, reading, predicting, learning, but he also knew that desperation could drive ingenuity. Then, in the middle of the night cycle, a strange anomaly appeared on the scanners, an uncharted station floating in the void, seemingly abandoned but heavily shielded. Jason's instincts screamed both warning and opportunity. Perhaps this was a place to regroup. Perhaps it was a trap. But what choice did he have? Allies were unreliable. The galaxy was crumbling. The hunters were patient. And he was running out of time. Jason set a course for the station, every instinct alert. He knew betrayal lurked in every corner of the fleet, in every shadow of the void. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark remained. He would survive. He would find a way to fight. And he would make the hunters pay for every life erased, every world destroyed. But as the Vanguard approached the station, Jason felt it before his sensors did. A subtle shift in the void, a presence that wasn't his own, moving faster than light unseen. The hunters were here, and they were ready. Jason Trent's hands were raw, gripping the controls of the Starfire Vanguard. His eyes, bloodshot and unblinking, scanned the void. Ahead lay the black maw of the Arcturus Rift, a deadly, unstable anomaly in space. Behind him, the crimson glow of the hunter fleet closed in, relentless, adaptive, merciless. There was no running now. The galaxy itself had become a hunting ground, and he was the bait. He had no allies left. Voss and his faction had fled. Other ships were scattered or destroyed. The survivors had abandoned hope long ago. The hunters had learned everything about human tactics, anticipating every move, predicting every thought. Every escape route Jason had calculated, they had countered. There was only one option left, a final stand. Jason's mind raced. The rift was volatile, its gravitational pull capable of tearing a ship apart. But it could also be a weapon, a trap for the hunters if he played it right. He had no time for hesitation. He had only one chance to turn the tables, to survive, to strike back. He engaged the Vanguard's full systems, rerouting all power to shields and weapons. The experimental cannon, the very weapon that had started this nightmare, was ready. He had spent hours recalibrating it, pushing it beyond design limits, hoping it could deliver the one thing the hunters hadn't anticipated, a concentrated shockwave capable of tearing through their ship's adaptive hulls. The first hunter appeared, sleek and crimson, moving like a living shadow. Jason fired. The cannon roared, a deafening pulse ripping through the void. For a moment, the hunter's ship staggered, its hull fracturing. Then came the others. Wave after wave, faster than thought. They struck as one, coiling around the rift like predators around a kill. Jason twisted, dodged, and fired, but his energy reserves were draining. Each pulse brought hope, then despair. Every ship he destroyed was replaced by another, faster, smarter, more ruthless. The rift trembled violently. Meteoroids, energy surges, and gravitational anomalies tore at the Vanguard. Jason's stomach lurched with each pulse. He was running out of space, out of options, out of time. And then came the psychic assault. The hunters, sensing his desperation, flooded his mind with visions. Entire galaxies burning, billions screaming, civilizations erased. He staggered in the cockpit, vision swimming. Fear tried to paralyze him. But Jason forced his mind into focus. Survival wasn't about bravery anymore. It was about precision, strategy, execution. He targeted the lead hunter, calculating the perfect angle. He adjusted the rift's unstable currents to amplify the cannon's pulse. The first shot struck. A shock wave erupted, tearing through space itself. Hunter's ships disintegrated in a crimson explosion. Others recoiled, momentarily disrupted. Jason didn't wait. He dove the Vanguard into the heart of the rift, weaving between deadly gravitational eddies. The hunters followed, but the rift was unstable, unpredictable. Jason's gamble began to pay off. Ships were torn apart, hulls shattered, their coordinated assault faltering. Yet victory was still a razor's edge. One misstep, one miscalculation, and the rift would claim him. He pressed onward, heart hammering, sweat blinding him, adrenaline fueling every decision. Then came the final wave. The hunters, desperate and furious, converged on him. Jason unleashed a cannon at maximum capacity. The resulting blast lit up the void, a blinding, deafening eruption of energy. The lead ship shattered, cascading shards across space. Others faltered, but not all were destroyed. Jason's ship was battered, systems failing, energy critical. He knew he couldn't survive another assault, but he had achieved something. He had survived, and he had struck the hunters. He powered the last sequence, a full rift collapse, drawing the remaining hunters into the gravitational maelstrom. The vanguard shook violently as the rift imploded, consuming hunter ships, energy surges tearing through the void, before finally stabilizing. Silence. Jason floated in the cockpit, panting, exhausted, staring at the stars. The galaxy was still intact, at least for now. The hunters had been repelled, but not destroyed. He knew this victory was temporary. They would return. They always returned. But he had survived. He had fought. And in the void, surrounded by the wreckage of his desperation, Jason Trent made a promise to warn, to prepare, to survive. The galaxy might not forgive his mistake, but he would fight for every life left in its shadow. As he drifted through the stars, a faint pulse echoed across the void, familiar and terrifying. The hunters had left a mark, a warning. They were watching, waiting, and Jason knew, deep down, that the war had only just begun.